Malnutrition is one of the most overlooked threats to healthy aging. Millions of adults struggle with appetite loss, chronic conditions, and dietary restrictions. At the same time, we're entering this amazing new era where AI can generate recipes, adapt ingredients in real time, and personalize meals down to cultural memory and micronutrients. So the question is, can AI actually help us nourish people better? Welcome to AI Powered Caregiving, a podcast exploring how technology is reshaping the way we care for older adults. I'm Ishanya Anthapur, product manager and your host from Zemplee, where we're building AI-powered tools to support caregivers with revolutionary health tracking, alerts, and in-residence virtual care. To kick off today's conversation, we're talking about the future of food and dignity, personalized nutrition. And we have an amazing guest, someone who's been at the forefront of culinary AI innovation. Our guest today is an award-winning chef, a food innovation leader, working at the intersection of food and AI. And strangely enough, there is an intersection of food and AI. He's gained national recognition after competing on and winning on Beat Bobby Flay. So he won against Bobby Flay, and he later helped develop IBM's groundbreaking Chef Watson AI platform. Today, he's the founder of CulinAI, where he's using precision AI to design meals that are nutritious, personalized, and culturally meaningful. James also recently presented at the United Nations AI for Good Summit on how AI can shape the future of personalized food and health. This summer, he'll also be presenting at the prestigious Gottlieb Duttweiler Institute in Switzerland on the future of the intersection of food with AI. Welcome to the podcast, James Briscione.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here and chat with you today.
We're really, really excited to have you and delve into this topic a little bit. Let me start with one of my questions I'm really excited to get to, but you've been in the AI and food world for a long time. You said since 2012 when you started to help develop IBM's Chef Watson. Could you tell us just a little bit about that Chef Watson project?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, really, this began in 2012, and we're all so used to, just speaking to our phones, all of the innovations that are just really second nature, right now. But this was coming right off of the heels. IBM had just blown everybody's mind with taking Chef Watson on Jeopardy. And it was, showing native language processing. You could ask a computer a question and it would respond. And this was like, something that the majority of people had never seen before, or really, even thought was possible. And it's wild to think that was, just, less than 15 years ago. And it is so commonplace now. But, so the next idea after we proved, a computer could answer any question and could, conquer any Jeopardy champion was could the computer help people become more creative? And so the team decided they wanted to, explore that, and they thought about, music and art, and then, food, and they were sort of, decided, and then, food was the most tangible and the most objective route for that. So they came to the Institute of Culinary Education, where I was director of culinary development, and kind of, presented this idea, and it started off sort of in my mind as this like, man versus or chef versus computer kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, let's get in the kitchen and I'll show you I can cook circles around a computer. Doesn't know how to taste, it doesn't know how to saute. Like there's no way that a computer could possibly know more about food and cooking than me, who's been doing this at that time for almost 15 years. So it was fun, and I have a very analytical brain and a strong science background. So we kind of talked about the creative process and how how I go about the process of creating a dish, and it was very similar to what they were trying to create with Watson. So we were just like, yeah, this will be a fun little thing to do one afternoon. First steps, day one, was completely blown away by the understanding that the system had, Chef Watson had, about food and the patterns that it could help reveal, and then the connections and the kind of things, that I was able to learn from it right in that very first
Really?
in that very first session in the kitchen. It was really, it was really something, and then evolved just kind of, greatly from there. But I've kind of talked long enough on that, so I'm sure we'll kind of come back and touch back some more on that as we go through some of these others.
That's amazing. I mean, I love hearing these stories, and it's so interesting to know that you also learned from it. You kind of went in with the idea, like, cooking and food is such a human experience. It's a key part of human life, obviously, but the art of it is so human that you thought like maybe a computer could not have that little touch. But I think there's, like you said, some things a computer can do, like with the patterns and pattern recognition, that it can do a lot faster and better than humans. So that's really interesting. After your experiences with Chef Watson, and then now with your own company, CulinAI, where you're using precision AI to design meals and using this pattern recognition to sort of list out ingredients and list out techniques, and design a whole recipe. What do you think is the balance? So, do you think AI does have the potential to improve like meals and nutrition, or is it over optimizing on something that is a very human, um, part of human nature, a human trait, which is cooking and delivering food and nutrition and feeding?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and I think there's, kind of two ways, to look at it, and one is, as a chef on that creative side, and the other is really specifically, I think where, we're certainly interested with Culinary AI, and I, spent a lot of time thinking about is on that caregiver side, about what, how AI can help. And I think that's that's really important. And I think when you approach it not as the robot that's here to cook for me, but as
Mm.
the collaborator that can help me streamline processes. I mean, as a caregiver, and you're trying to balance so many different elements, and I mean, the expectations, or whether it's the expectations or the needs of a caregiver, could be, to be a full time, medical, whether a doctor or a nurse, a nutritionist, a chef, a grocery shop, so many different roles, where AI can, balance, look for medication interactions, look for, kind of hidden sodium, issues in food that may be being prepared, and plan out. And I think, too, when you look at it, so it's the management of so many different factors, that you really need, if not expertise, to be just well versed in so many different fields. You can sort of synthesize all that through a single interaction, which is extraordinary, can be extraordinarily powerful.
That's making sense. Let me just rephrase to make sure I've got it. But basically, food and delivering food, cooking for someone is still a human act, but there's a lot to it, like you said, with management, diet preparation, being aware of restrictions, and trying to build recipes around that AI can help with. I like the
Exactly.
idea of, yeah, like the sodium regulation. I mean, that's something I never think about. But I would love to have less sodium in my diet, right? And so if there's something that can recommend a recipe that's inherently like less sodium, then yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, and as as a chef of 20 plus years, I mean, I kind of, I know how to manage those little things that, we can eliminate, or we can swap this ingredient, because it's going to deliver the same flavor profile without, with much lower sodium levels. And you can look at those kind of, like, those sort of smart swaps. I think is really, one of the most powerful things, right? Because, just, knowing that, and this is kind of ties back to with Chef Watson, and one of the first things, that we really dove deep into, and the reason I wrote my last book, The Flavor Matrix, it's about the chemical compounds in food that are responsible for flavor. You have all of these, in many ingredients. In an apple, you've got over 400 different aromatic compounds that create the flavor of an apple. You think it tastes like an apple, but you don't realize, all of this complexity that's actually happening for something to taste like an apple. and it's each of those compounds plays a role in creating the flavor of the apple. Now, if you imagine some of those compounds are tied, intrinsically to fat or sugar or sodium, and we can find another source for that compound, that isn't tied with one of those things that we're trying to eliminate or trying to watch out for in the diet, or that is tied to something that's going to be beneficial, something that is tied to potassium, or magnesium or iron, or whatever it may be. So now we can start improving the diet and deliver the same flavors.
Oh, that's okay. That's so interesting. So basically, there is all this knowledge, and I mean, I agree with you. I think the average person who's a caregiver, whether professional or personal, does not have the time or the bandwidth to be
No.
thinking about all these things when they're going
The
grocery
majority of
shopping.
chefs, the majority of chefs, I know don't necessarily have all, like this is not common or simple, knowledge with a degree. My background in nutrition dietetics and organic chemistry and biochemistry, and studying this for years, beginning with Chef Watson. Like I have a strong understanding of all of this, but it's not it is not common knowledge. There's some of this that chefs sort of know, intrinsically, that you just learn over the years, but it's not something that's being taught anywhere.
Um, so tell me a little bit about the development of CulinAI. Is it kind of your, it feels like you have this desire to transfer this knowledge or make it more accessible. Is that kind of what drove the start of this?
Yeah, we did, and the AI is really such a great and powerful tool, and I think one of my kind of my tagline about working with AI is that AI is only as smart as we ask it to be. And that's, I think, really important in thinking about and framing the interaction and a relationship with any sort of AI system. So if you really know how to interact properly, and ask the right questions to get the right information out of it, then it can be very powerful. But with what we with Colon AI, what we were really interested in doing is chatbots, particularly whether you're going to chat GPT, or Gemini, or whoever it may be. um, they're indexing publicly, information. We are creating a purpose-built model that has a deep understanding of flavor science, and recipe creation, as well as medical nutrition, so that it can really be trained and specific on those elements. Because if you ask ChatGPT to create 10 gluten-free recipes for you,
Mm.
one or two is probably going to have some gluten in it somewhere. It's going to, and then you're going to say, "Wait a second, two of these recipes have gluten." It's going to say, "Ah, you're absolutely right. I made six great recipes for you, and then we just went back to the theme. Went back to the theme." So when you have a high stakes situation like
Mm.
caregiving, like recovery, and some of a little mistake like that in a recipe is going to be critical. You really need a trusted source, for that knowledge base. And your basic GPTs don't are certainly not now at the point of delivering that. So that's what we want to try to build with Colon AI, is this very
Mm.
powerful culinary nutrition engine.
I'm curious as to how did you guys train the model? I know, uh, was it like feeding it a bunch of the recipe books and things like that? You said you have a lot of experience in this. Like, I would imagine you fed it your own book and other similar
Yeah.
publications.
Yeah, so it's a lot of specific data sources. The USDA publishes a lot of great information on with nutrition data, recipe database. There's not many public There's a few good public recipe databases, and then we added all of my books, and and all of that, and then medical nutrition, information. So how diet related disease, what are the typical factors, and what are the kind of what are the where do the diagnosis live through food, with those. And I mean, there's a lot of very dense technical data sources that go along with that, along with the flavor science. So big databases of ingredients and flavor compounds in those ingredients, so that we can do that matching and those smart swaps, and find those spots where we can dramatically drop the sodium in a recipe without changing the flavor. I think we something we kind of discussed a little bit off camera before, but that idea of the nostalgia is, and I mean the strongest sense tied to memory is smell, and that's what in flavor is, right? So the idea that grandma wasn't really worried about macros; she wanted meatloaf, So they but now we know a lot more, and we know how to address that. So if we can take grandma's meatloaf recipe, get more lean proteins in it, increase the vitamin in it, take down the fat, take down the sodium, in these really smart ways. That's an amazing thing. So you can keep that comfort and that nostalgia, in your food, but still deliver the fuel that your body needs.
Yeah, I'm so curious about this sort of aspect of memory that CulinAI is working on and trying to trigger, right? Because I think what I've thought about is, as you get older and you can't cook for yourself, as someone who loves to cook and I love my mom's food, like I'm very afraid of losing that particular flavor. And I'm like, well, I'm never going to taste it again after some time. That's a scary thought, right? So I think
Yeah.
the fact that Cullen AI could approach preserving your memories, your recipes, and like your culturally relevant meals as well as possible to transfer to your caregiver or your next of kin to cook is beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that cultural relevance is such an important thing. I have a good friend who's from India originally, and she had pre-gestational diabetes. Got a handout from from kind of the nutrition at the nutritionist, and with her OBGYNs, that these are kind of the foods like, not a single recipe appealed. Like this is not my food. This is not not what I want to eat.
Right.
Luckily, her husband was one of the collaborators in Chef Watson, so he knew a little bit of how to handle this, and both great foodies. But I think when you talk about care, like that nutrition or that cultural relevance is so important, and that's another big piece of what we want CulinAI to be able to do is deliver culturally relevant meals and dishes that fit the nutritional needs of anyone.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I love this idea. I'm so honored to be able to talk to you and to get to pick your brain. And I think the work y'all are doing, Cullen AI, is just really amazing and is really going to help improve not only the lives of caregivers, but also the way that people age in this country. And so,
Yeah,
thank you so
absolutely.
much.
Well,
Thank
thank
you so
you.
much,
Great to
James.
chat. Great to chat. Appreciate everything you guys are doing.
Yeah, and everyone that's listening, go check out Cullen AI. It's an amazing platform. At least check out the website. It's pretty simple. CulinAI, and everything will be linked in the show notes, as well, including the link to James's book, The Flavor Matrix, which sounds also fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The old fashioned way. Open up a book. It still works. It still works.
Well, thank you so much, James. Have a great
All
day.
right. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.